Our kids here in Kazakhstan are just as good and in many ways even better. They've got this inner drive, a warrior spirit. Before, coaches were just scraping by. Now they have the opportunity to work in private clubs or training groups. But that raises an issue of access. Doesn't this approach risk making football an elite sport? What used to be a working-class sport is turning into something for the wealthy. So you're saying Kazakhstan is teaching Portugal something about football? In this specific area, yes, absolutely. We shouldn't even be worrying about the professional football right now, as long as there's chaos at the grassroots level. So were you aware it was a losing strategy? Altai Daumov, a football manager and one of the first in Kazakhstan to earn a European diploma through the UEFA program. He currently heads Footlab, a unique youth football center in Kazakhstan. Good evening, Altai. Hello, welcome. I'd like to start with a bit of a harsh truth. Kazakhstan isn't exactly known as a football powerhouse, and even after 30 years, we haven't really become one. But you're working with kids, which means you're clearly thinking long-term. So tell me, do you think we have a real shot at reaching the level of European clubs someday? That's exactly why we're doing what we're doing, to help Kazakh football grow to a European level. And as I've said in previous interviews, our kids here in Kazakhstan are just as good, and in many ways even better, as the ones playing in England, Spain or Germany. Better in what way? They've got this inner drive, a warrior spirit, that pushes them to go after their goals without hesitation, and this helps them grow as a team. So you're saying it's our mentality, our mindset, that could give us an edge in football? Yes, that's actually true, because Europe is becoming somewhat softer, while our children are still untouched by these trends. They're still willing, they're not afraid, they want to grow, and they truly believe that one day they will achieve something great. And I think if they believe it, they will. But of course, it's on us to create the right conditions for them. If we do that, I'm confident they'll succeed. Let's talk more about that today, how grassroots youth football is developing here in Kazakhstan. Let's do it. Altai, right now we're watching a training session with some very young kids. It's honestly so fun to watch. They're full of energy, and you can tell they're really into it. They play with so much passion, like they're not just little kids who love sports, but already real professional footballers. So I'd love to talk more broadly with you. What's the current state of youth football in Kazakhstan? Do boys and girls, as we've seen, have the chance to pursue the sport they love? Actually, youth football in Kazakhstan has been growing steadily in recent years, thanks to both private investment and government support through subsidies. The conditions are definitely improving. Centers like Footlab show how much things have changed. Here, kids don't just enjoy playing football, they enjoy the whole experience. They feel like pros already. You mentioned it yourself. For them, this feels like the World Cup. They're on quality turf, playing in front of parents and spectators, and the coaches create a smart, supportive atmosphere that really helps them grow. That kind of environment fuels their desire to keep playing, and once the desire is there, the skills will follow. Well, we're in Almaty. What about other regions, smaller towns, for example? Yeah, unfortunately, the infrastructure in other cities and towns is still lagging behind. But the president has actually made this a priority. The current plan is to develop facilities in small towns and rural areas across the country. He's promised that within the next couple of years, these kinds of football pitches will be built everywhere. Of course, they may not be as premium as what we see here in Almaty, but they'll be a big step forward. Every child should have a chance to play. Back in our day, we played on asphalt. Artificial turf felt like a dream. Now there's investment. there's funding, and there's access to better technology. And what about coaches? Is there enough coaching talent specifically trained to work with kids? Coaching is one of the biggest challenges for sure, but good news is that a lot of young people are becoming interested in coaching now. There's money starting to flow into the sport too. Before, coaches were just scraping by. Now they have the opportunity to work in private clubs or training groups, and that gives them a more stable income, enough to think beyond just getting through the day. They can be creative, they can start coming up with new ideas and actually invest in professional development. UEFA plays a huge role here too. They support our football development by training coaches and sharing advanced European methods. And when our coaches improve, our players benefit too. In your view, how should the system actually function? Most professional clubs have youth divisions, which are often state-funded, especially in the regions. Then there are private academies and football schools. So how do we build a system where our national team is made up of homegrown players who've been properly trained and scouted, players who represent Kazakhstan and maybe even play for top clubs abroad?
Сборная состояла из вот таких вот мальчишек, которые выросли, которые были отобраны правильно и оказались все-таки вот на этой вершине, представляют Казахстан или играют там в супер классных клубах. Опять же под
Great question. Think of it like a pyramid. At the base, you have grassroots youth football, kids playing in school programs, neighborhood leagues. Then you have a layer of private clubs. In many cases, these private clubs do a better job in the early years than the state-funded academies run by mayors' offices. Ideally, around the age of 14 or 15, those private academies should feed into the professional clubs. Then over the next 3 to 4 years, those players can be developed and prepared for adult-level football. If we build this kind of clear, connected pipeline, we can raise the level of the game overall.
В течение 3-4 лет доводили до какого-то определенного уровня этих игроков и давали им возможность уже во взрослом футболе себя проявить. И вот таким образом, если выстроить вот эту вот вертикаль правильно, то можно повышать уровень со временем.
You mentioned that private clubs sometimes outperform state-run children and youth sports schools. What makes them better? Mostly they have better equipment, higher salaries for coaches and better training conditions, all thanks to parental contributions. The government simply can't find every child's training needs. So up to a certain age, say 14, it really helps when parents can support their child's development. That's when the foundation is laid, between the ages of about 5 and 11. Those are critical years. It's important that training is well structured, the fields are high quality, the equipment is right, and the coaches are trained to work with kids properly.
Но это же вопрос доступности.
But that raises an issue of access. We have so many talented kids, especially in the regions. Doesn't this approach risk making football an elite sport?
Каким-то элитарным видом спорта при вот таком подходе.
Unfortunately, that's already becoming the trend, not just in Kazakhstan, but in Europe and the US as well. What used to be a working-class sport is turning into something for the wealthy. In the US, for example, youth football training can cost families $500 a month. And if a child's family can't afford that, it's very hard for them to break through. The same thing is starting to happen here. If a family can afford extra training sessions, travel to international tournaments, and so on, that child will naturally have more opportunities. The state simply can't afford to take all of them to international tournaments, or to guarantee high-quality pitches for everyone. And it definitely can't offer training more than 2 to 3 times a week in a group setting, let alone additional sessions with a personal coach or a fitness specialist. I'd also like to talk to you about KIFC. How effective is it right now in addressing the challenges we've been discussing?
Вот для тех задач, о которых мы с вами сейчас говорим.
Мы когда в 2018
When we launched the team back in 2018, our focus was on the European model.
того, что каждый ребенок это отдельный проект.
The idea was simple: every child is a project.
Получал удовольствие, и мы делаем
Our goal wasn't to force them into becoming professional footballers.
развивается, и при этом мы не ставили задач перед ними становиться.
We wanted to create a space where the child enjoys the process, feels comfortable, and grows. What we wanted was for football to be a means to something bigger, maybe a scholarship to study abroad, like in the US, where they could get an education and use football as a stepping stone. Or maybe they'd choose a different path entirely, start a career but still play the game just for fun, for example, at university. So now, we didn't push them to chase a professional career at all costs. Because let's be honest, becoming a professional footballer in Kazakhstan right now is an extremely tough road. Very few make it.
Туда, куда вот многие стремятся.
What's the biggest obstacle? A lot of kids drop out around 15 or 16. There just aren't enough proper 11-a-side pitches for them to continue developing.
Играть 11 на 11.
And when they hit 18 or 19, the age when they should be breaking into the adult game, they're benched.
Дают возможности, потому что их места
Their spots are taken by more experienced players or foreign imports.
И они сидят лет до
So they end up sitting on the sidelines until they're 25.
уже их конкуренты европейцы.
Meanwhile, their peers in Europe are already playing at a top level.
И у нас, в принципе, вот это,
This lack of trust in young players is one of the biggest issues we face.
наверное, проблем, которые вообще возникают в нашем футболе.
So it starts with a lack of infrastructure. Exactly, at that 15-16 age range, when they're transitioning to full-scale football, we lose a lot of potential.
Кто через вот эти жернова прошли и вышли,
And even the ones who push through hit another wall. Clubs don't give them the chance to actually play,
клубы, потому что с клубов требуют
because the pressure is all about results. Win now. And young players often don't get many opportunities. But thankfully, that's slowly starting to shift.
идет к тому, что
More and more young players are getting their shot.
пускать, и это очень радует.
So you said young players are finally getting a chance. What's changed?
Начинают постепенно подпускать.
What's caused that shift, in your opinion?
На ваш взгляд, что эта тенденция переломилась?
The emergence of standout players like Dastan Satbayev, who are already competitive at 16 or 17,
Которые уже могут в 16
they've proven you don't have to wait until 25 to compete with the grown-ups anymore. And I think that says a lot about how much youth football has progressed.
связываю с тем, что общий уровень футбола, в принципе, растет именно детской
То
юности.
есть
So your work with youth players is building trust in the next generation.
прекрасных детей, которые повышают доверие, в принципе, ко всем остальным молодым.
Exactly. On that note, what's your take on the Ministry of Sport's recent legislation? The one that bans paying foreign players with public money.
Закон о том, чтобы запретить финансирование
Now clubs will have to fund their foreign players through private sponsors. Is that a step in the right direction, both short-term and long-term?
в моменте и в долгосрочной перспективе.
Honestly, if we approach it the right way and make smart use of the resources we've got, this could turn into something really exciting, a solid initiative that actually moves things forward. And over time, it could help raise the overall level of football in the country. It's not even about whether we can afford to bring in foreign players. The real goal is to teach clubs how to generate revenue themselves, let them learn to earn, get sponsors, sell tickets, sell merchandise, even sell players. And then, with that revenue, they can afford to bring in 2 or 3 solid foreign players, and maybe even sell them later. The whole football industry can be rebooted.
Футбола можно перезапустить по-другому.
But that's exactly the idea behind the new rule, isn't it? It doesn't ban foreign players, it just says you can't use state money to pay their salaries. Right, but some clubs completely misinterpret it. Their reaction was, oh, okay, then we'll just use only local Kazakh players from now on. Instead of looking for solutions and trying to stay competitive, they just throw up their hands and say, fine, that's what I mean. We need a smarter interpretation of these reforms.
Поняли эту инициативу.
Why do you think that's happening? Are you speaking from real examples? Yes, absolutely. I won't name names, but these are real cases. And the reason is simple. The overall level of football management in the country is still underdeveloped. Clubs don't think in terms of sustainability or long-term growth. They just focus on using whatever funds they're given. Right now, here's what happens. A club gets, say, 1.2 billion tenge from the regional budget. Exactly. They spend that 1.2 billion, and next year they get the same amount again. There's no incentive to think about how to generate income for the future. They're given that money just because they exist, because they're the only club in town, and they know it'll keep coming. So what would be the right approach? The right way is to push clubs to start earning their own income. Over time, reduce state subsidies and encourage clubs to think how to earn money. Football is an industry. It generates revenue around the world. Why shouldn't it work the same way here in Kazakhstan? The same models can be applied. Let's take a typical regional club. Say they currently have 3 or 4 foreign players. Now, they can't use public money to pay those salaries, but they also don't have other sources of funding. So they drop the foreign players, and suddenly they've got some budget freed up. Where do you think that money should go?
Да? Стало быть, у них освобождаются средства. Куда эти средства правильнее было бы направить, на ваш взгляд?
Always into youth football. We shouldn't even be worrying about the professional football right now. As long as there's chaos at the grassroots level, as long as we can't provide quality training environments, proper coaching, we won't see real progress at the top. The state is slowly starting to realize that investment needs to go into the kids, but they need to trust the right people, the professionals who truly care and know what they're doing. And if we get that part right, step by step, professional football will grow, but it'll take 10 to 15 years. Earlier, you mentioned that the money freed up from not paying foreign players should be invested into youth football. Yes, but if we get specific, where exactly should it go? It should go toward making sure every child has the opportunity to train. We've got a population of about 20 million, and every kid, even those in remote villages, should have access to more than just kicking a ball and a field that gets resurfaced once. There should be a proper system in place. Coaches should be trained, and the most talented kids from those villages should be able to move into the city, join an academy, and keep developing. That's the whole pyramid I was talking about earlier. It needs to work its way upward. And I truly believe that those 22 players are already out there. We just have to find them. How did you personally get into football? Pretty much like most kids, it started as a childhood dream. When I was 13, I used to fall asleep thinking that one day I'd run my own football academy. Not that you wanted to become a footballer, but a football executive. Exactly. But usually boys want to play football, not manage the people who play it. Well, I loved playing football. I really did. But I played in far from ideal conditions. And at some point, I realized I wasn't going to become a professional footballer. And that's right around the time the game Football Manager came out on PC. I played it for days. I'd buy players, build training grounds, upgrade stadiums. That was back in the early 2000s, and it was basically the only game I had on my computer. I'd set up catering services, open restaurants, hire and fire coaches. I'd design training programs, all within the game. That's what I lived for. I dreamed of turning that virtual world into something real. And now that's exactly what I'm doing. It's a childhood dream come true. And honestly, there's no greater joy. But wasn't there a moment when you thought, there's no football industry in Kazakhstan, maybe I should go somewhere where it does exist? I've been asked that a lot, and I've received offers from other countries too. But I realized, if our generation doesn't step up, no one will. The older generation doesn't quite have the knowledge, they're from a different era. And the younger generation, many of them aren't that interested in football at all anymore. They're more into gaming. Kids today struggle to sit through 90 minutes of a match. So if we, those of us born in the 80s and 90s, don't act now, this entire industry might never take off. And this type of center you've built, there's nothing else like it in Kazakhstan. And honestly, not many like it worldwide. Not just in Kazakhstan. As of now, there are only 2 functioning centers like this in the world. One is in Portugal, where the franchise originally started. It's actually co-owned by Cristiano Ronaldo and his partner Rui Costa, another football legend. This franchise was first established in Dubai, Lisbon and Almaty. They're only now starting to look at expanding to places like the US and other European cities. But how did it end up here in Kazakhstan, of all places, and not in a country with a more developed football scene? Honestly, we were just the fastest to act. While others were still talking and planning, we found the right location, got everything organized quickly, and launched before anyone else. And I see that as a big advantage, because in this kind of business, the faster you move, the better it is. Not just for the business itself, for the overall development of the whole project. And what exactly does the franchise include? We see the field and the setup here looks amazing. But what makes it a franchise? Are those high-tech training stations part of it? Exactly. The core of the franchise is the technology, the stations and the training simulators. The football academy part, that's more our own innovation. We didn't want kids to just come and treat this like an amusement park. We wanted them to actually improve their skills on the pitch. And our long-term plan is to move on to full-sized fields so we can close the loop. Create a full pyramid system that takes kids from their very first steps in the game all the way to the professional level. Will that expansion happen in Astana? Possibly. Astana or maybe right here. But honestly, I'd love to see a center like this in every major city across Kazakhstan. How did the franchise owners react when you went beyond the basic concept, a kind of football amusement park for young footballers? You also set up a full-fledged training center, a real academy where kids are actually learning to play football and could potentially go on to become professional players. Actually, they'd been thinking about something similar themselves, and now we're working together to take their concept a step further. The goal is to eventually have a proper football academy in every one of their centers. We're building this around a training methodology developed by our sporting director here in Kazakhstan, and the idea is that they could offer this model to their other franchisees as well. That's exactly what we're discussing at the moment, and we're really hoping to bring it to life. So you're saying Kazakhstan is teaching Portugal something about football? Yes, absolutely. Is it really true that football is becoming less popular among kids in Kazakhstan? It's not just here, it's a global trend. Any sport that requires focus and long attention spans is struggling. Kids today are raised on TikTok and Reels. Everything is fast, 2 to 5 minutes, and then they lose interest. They can't sit through a 90-minute match like we used to. Now, even when they're watching football, they're scrolling Instagram at the same time. Is it something we just have to accept and work around? We have to adapt. Even the formats of football are changing. People are experimenting with shorter halves, gamified elements, new ways to make the experience more engaging. Football is one of the oldest sports in the world. It's not easy to change, but even football is being reimagined to attract a new audience. And how does that affect the development pyramid you've talked about? Are fewer kids coming in at the entry level? Are younger children simply less interested in this sport these days? Well, I don't have the exact statistics, but I'm pretty sure that compared to our generation, more kids today are spending their time on phones or doing something else. Back then, we used to be outside all day, literally spending hours in the streets, and that's the environment we grew up in. That's where we developed. Because the truth is, you can't really teach a kid to play football in just 3 to 4 hours a week, and that's about how much the average child trains now. To really grow as a player, you need to be out there playing football all day. And from their scheduled sessions, kids still need to go home and then in the evening go out and kick the ball around in the yard. Absolutely. They need at least 3 more hours a day playing outside. That's the only way a kid can really grow into a footballer. If all they're doing is showing up 3 times a week for 1 hour, that's not going to cut it. Altai, what made you decide to run for president of the Football Federation? It was a very deliberate decision. It's no secret that I actually helped to write the previous national football development strategy alongside Adliat Nazarbayevich, the former president of the federation. When he stepped down, I realized that many of the ideas we had outlined hadn't yet been implemented, for one reason or another. But I had the knowledge and experience. After completing my UEFA football management training, I knew I had something to contribute, something that could benefit football on a national level. Have any of the initiatives you proposed back then actually been implemented? Or did you take a completely different direction? They've taken a slightly different path. As I mentioned before, I wanted to start from the ground up, to build from the foundation. I wasn't really interested in what was happening in professional football, because for me the priority was to bring order to the grassroots level. But that's not exactly the most popular area to work in, and definitely not the most profitable. There's no quick money in it, and I guess the results don't come that quickly either, right? Exactly. It's a long-term game. Even if I had worked on it for, say, 4 years, there's no guarantee I'd see any real results, maybe not even in 8. So, were you aware that in a way it was a losing strategy? For me personally, yes. Not for football, which is exactly why I wanted to do it in the first place.